Professor Rex, Episode 03. Is your liver waking you up at night? The sign millions ignore after age 60. Have you ever found yourself awake in the middle of the night, staring at the ceiling, without knowing exactly why? Maybe it's 1, 2, 3 in the morning. Maybe it's always around the same time. You turn to your side, close your eyes again, you even manage to fall asleep, but a few hours later you're awake again. At the same time, as if someone were knocking on your inner door. Ask yourself this. Do you frequently wake up between 1 and 4 in the morning for no apparent reason? And what's more, have you noticed that this happens almost every night at almost the same time, as if your body had a silent alarm that no one programmed? If you answered yes to any of these questions, I want you to stay with me until the end of this video, because what I'm going to tell you today can completely change how you understand your nights, and, more than that, what your body is trying to tell you while you sleep. My name is Professor Rex, and throughout my years studying health, longevity, and well-being for people over 60, I have repeatedly come across an issue that most people completely ignore, and that many doctors, busy with quick 15-minute consultations, rarely have time to address. When you wake up in the middle of the night for no apparent reason, the natural thought is, it's old age, it's stress, it's anxiety, it's my bladder, and it could be any of those things. But there's a much less known, much less discussed possibility that specifically affects people over 60 with an astonishing frequency. And this possibility has everything to do with an organ that works tirelessly while you sleep, but which, when overloaded, can turn your nights into a series of unexplained interruptions. I'm talking about the liver. Yes, the liver, that silent organ sitting quietly on the right side of your abdomen, processing, filtering, producing, regulating, and which, when it starts to struggle, can send signals that most of us have never learned to recognize. Today, I'm going to show you these signs. I'll explain why they appear especially during the early morning hours. I'll show you the habits that may be worsening the problem without you realizing it. And at the end of this video, I'll give you simple and practical steps that you can start tonight. But before we delve deeper into this subject, I need to make you a promise. Nothing I'm going to say here replaces an evaluation by a doctor. My role today is to open your mind, to shine a light in a dark corridor. The person who will walk down that corridor with you safely is your healthcare professional. Agreed? Great. Let's get started then. Block 1. The mystery of 3 in the morning. Why does your body have a favorite time to wake you up? There is an ancient concept of Eastern origin called the biological clock of the organs. Traditional Chinese medicine has described, for centuries, that each organ in the human body has a period of greater activity throughout the day, and a period in which this activity reaches its peak during the early morning hours. According to this view, the liver would have its peak activity exactly between 1 and 3 in the morning. Now, before you think I'm talking about something purely spiritual, let me add something fascinating. Modern science has identified that the liver actually follows circadian rhythms, that is, biological cycles of approximately 24 hours that regulate when it performs each of its functions. And yes, a significant part of the liver's cleansing and regeneration work happens during nighttime sleep. The liver doesn't rest while you sleep. On the contrary, it takes advantage of this quiet period to perform tasks that would be very difficult to carry out while you are active. Processing substances that have circulated in the blood throughout the day, producing proteins essential for the body's functioning, regulating blood sugar levels, synthesizing clotting factors, storing vitamins and minerals, and eliminating toxins. It has over 500 different functions. 500! No other organ in the human body performs as many distinct tasks as the liver. And when this organ is working beyond its capacity, when it is in some way overloaded, it can trigger a series of reactions in the body that disrupt sleep, slightly raise body temperature, activate the nervous system, and cause the body to move from deep sleep to a state of partial alertness. You don't necessarily wake up in pain. You don't wake up in a cold sweat. You simply open your eyes for no apparent reason, at the same time as always. But here's a detail that few people know, and that I promised I would reveal in this segment. The liver doesn't have nerves that transmit pain the way the stomach or heart do. It is literally a silent organ. When it's in trouble, it doesn't scream. It whispers, and these whispers reach us in ways we rarely associate with the liver. Persistent fatigue, swelling that appears out of nowhere, interrupted sleep in the middle of the night. In the next segment, I'm going to show you the first signs your liver uses to try to communicate with you. And when you hear them, you'll recognize them, because I bet at least one of them has already appeared in your life. Block 2. The first signs that the liver may be overloaded. Signs you're probably attributing to other causes. Let me introduce you to Dona Nora. Nora is 72 years old, lives with her husband in a quiet house in the countryside, has always been active, and has always taken good care of her diet, or so she thought. About 2 years ago, she began to notice that she woke up tired. It didn't matter how many hours she slept. 8 hours, 9 hours, the result was the same. She opened her eyes in the morning feeling as if she hadn't rested properly. She thought it was age. Her husband said it was stress. The doctor, in a quick consultation, attributed it to the onset of possible mild depression. But Nora also noticed other things. After lunch, especially when she ate something greasy, she felt a strange heaviness on the right side of her abdomen, just below her ribs. It wasn't pain. It was a feeling of pressure, a fullness, as if something there was working too hard. And at night, religiously, between 2 and 3 in the morning, she would open her eyes. Every day. Nora's story is fictional. I created her as a character to illustrate something I see reported repeatedly in studies, testimonies, and research on digestive health in adults over 60. Because the signs she presented are exactly those that medical literature associates with liver function working under stress. Let's talk about them. The first is persistent fatigue. When the liver cannot efficiently process metabolic waste, some of these substances remain in circulation longer than they should. This can generate a persistent feeling of tiredness, not the tiredness of someone who has worked too hard, but that underlying constant tiredness that is there when you wake up and is still there when you go to sleep. The second sign is a feeling of heaviness or discomfort after meals, especially fatty meals. The liver produces bile, which is essential for the digestion of fats. When it is overloaded, this production can be less efficient, and the result is this feeling that the food has been stuck, that the digestive process is slower than it should be. The third is bloating, not necessarily a large, distended belly. Sometimes it's just a feeling of gas, abdominal pressure, that something isn't flowing as it should. The bedroom is something that surprises many people, the quality of sleep. The liver participates in the regulation of substances that directly influence the sleep-wake cycle. When it is under stress, this regulation can be affected, and the result is exactly these nighttime interruptions, this waking up in the middle of the night without apparent cause. And the fifth, and this is especially important, is a general feeling that the body is heavy, slow, rusty, as if the internal engine needed an overhaul. Now tell me, how many of these signs did you recognize in yourself? Stay here, because in the next segment I'm going to reveal a very common nighttime habit. One that most people consider completely harmless, but which may be putting much more strain on your liver than you realize. Block 3. The nighttime habit that may be harming your liver. What you eat after 6 p.m. may be costing you dearly. Let me ask you a sincere question. What do you eat after 8 o'clock at night? Maybe a biscuit, maybe a piece of fruit, maybe that leftover dessert from dinner, maybe a spoonful of honey because it's natural, maybe a juice box because it's just fruit, maybe a cereal bar because it's healthy. Here begins one of the biggest misconceptions I see among people over 60 when it comes to liver health. Let's start with sugar. And I'm not just talking about the white sugar you put in your coffee. I'm talking about the sugar that's hidden in foods that seem harmless or even healthy. The liver is the main organ responsible for metabolizing fructose, the type of sugar found in fruits, juices, honey, natural sweeteners, and an absurd number of processed foods. When you consume excess fructose, especially at night when your metabolism is already slowing down to prepare your body for sleep, the liver receives an extra workload precisely when it should be focused on its cleansing and regenerating functions. Imagine you have a dedicated employee who spends the entire day working, and at the end of the shift, just as they were about to close the cash register and organize the day's records, you throw a huge pile of new documents on their desk and say, "Take care of this before you leave." This is what nighttime sugar consumption does to the liver. But sugar isn't alone in this story. Ultra-processed foods, those with ingredient lists that look like chemical formulas, full of preservatives, colorings, flavorings, and modified fats, require the liver to work extra hard to identify, process, and try to eliminate compounds that it simply wasn't designed to handle frequently. And heavy meals late at night are the third factor. When you eat a large meal at 10 or 11 o'clock at night, the peak of digestive work happens exactly when the body should be in recovery mode. The liver, which should be focused on its regenerative functions, is called upon to be at the forefront of digestion. Now comes the part that will surprise you. Many people I follow in my research are absolutely convinced that they make healthy choices at night. They drink chamomile tea with honey. They eat a banana. They drink green juice. They have yogurt with granola. And they get confused when they realize that their sleep is still poor, that the tiredness persists, that the bloating doesn't go away. Honey, which is pure natural sugar, is metabolized by the liver. Ripe bananas, which have a high glycemic index, especially at night, require liver processing. Juice, even green juice, usually concentrates the fructose of 2 or 3 fruits in a single glass, without the fiber that normally accompanies the whole fruit and moderates sugar absorption. And commercially produced granola, with all due respect, often has more sugar than it seems. I'm not saying these foods are bad. I'm saying that the time you eat them and the quantity matter much more than most people realize. In the next segment, I'm going to show you something you probably never associated with the liver: the direct connection between liver health and the quality of your sleep. Block 4. The relationship between the liver and sleep. The organ that works while you rest, and what happens when it can't. Think about it with me for a second. Have you ever noticed that when you have a bad cold, or after a large meal, or on days when you've drunk alcohol, your sleep is different? More restless, less restorative, full of interruptions? It's no coincidence. Sleep and the liver are connected in ways that science continues to discover, and that fascinate me more and more. One of the most important connections has to do with glucose. The liver is the main regulator of blood sugar during the night. While you sleep, it releases glucose in a controlled manner so that the brain and muscles continue to receive energy without you needing to wake up to eat. It's an elegant, precise system that works perfectly when the liver is healthy. But when the liver is overloaded with excess accumulated fat, an overload of substances to process, and chronic low-grade inflammation, this regulation can go off track. And a sudden drop in glucose in the middle of the night or uncontrolled regulation can activate the sympathetic nervous system, that alert fight or flight system, which basically wakes your body up even if you don't want it to. Another fascinating connection involves ammonia. The liver processes proteins and transforms the waste products of this digestion into substances that can be safely eliminated. One of these waste products is ammonia, which, at high levels in the blood, directly affects brain function and can cause sleep disturbances, mild mental confusion, and a feeling of heaviness in the head upon waking. This doesn't mean you have a serious illness. It means that sometimes, when the liver is working overtime, small amounts of these substances can accumulate enough to affect sleep quality, especially during the deepest hours of the night. There's also cortisol. The liver is involved in the metabolism of hormones, including cortisol, the stress hormone. When the liver is unable to metabolize cortisol efficiently, slightly elevated levels of this hormone during the early morning hours can result in exactly that typical waking up at 2 or 3 in the morning, with that feeling that your mind is already working even though your body is still tired. Do you understand now why those broken nights of sleep might have an explanation that goes far beyond a weak bladder or anxiety of old age? Sleep is a reflection of internal health, and the liver is one of the most honest mirrors the body possesses. But now I need to warn you about something that goes beyond sleep. In the next segment, I'll talk about signs that shouldn't be ignored, signs that indicate it's time to talk to a doctor as soon as possible. Block 5. Signs that should not be ignored. When the body stops whispering and starts speaking louder. Up until now, I've talked about subtle signs: fatigue, interrupted sleep, feeling heavy after meals, sporadic bloating. These are the whispers of the liver, signals that deserve attention and care, but which often respond well to lifestyle changes. But there are signs that indicate the liver isn't just overloaded, it's urgently needing help, and you can't ignore these signs. Not as a personal decision, not as it will pass. They require immediate medical evaluation. The first is a fatigue that goes beyond ordinary tiredness. I'm not talking about feeling tired after an active day. I'm talking about an exhaustion that doesn't improve with sleep, that's present even on the most tranquil days, that seems to come from within, as if the cells were crying out for help. The second is loss of appetite that persists for days or weeks. When the liver is experiencing more serious problems, it can affect bile production and nutrient metabolism in ways that simply kill the desire to eat. The third is persistent abdominal discomfort, especially in the upper right quadrant of the abdomen, where the liver is located. A feeling of pressure, heaviness, or diffuse pain that doesn't go away. The fourth sign is skin changes. A slightly yellowish tone, which may first appear in the eyes in the white part called the sclera, is a sign that bilirubin is not being processed properly. Generalized itching without apparent cause may also be related. The fifth sign is unusual changes in urine or stool. Urine that is very dark in color, like strong tea, or stool that is very light in color, almost whitish, may indicate that bile flow is compromised. If any of these signs apply to you right now, I want you to schedule a doctor's appointment as soon as possible. Not tomorrow, not next week, today. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm respecting you. And respecting you means being honest about when a sign calls for professional action, not just lifestyle adjustments. The vast majority of people watching this video are probably in the whispering group, subtle signals that respond well to simple changes. But I need you to know how to distinguish between the two. Now, let's talk about something that affects almost everyone over 60 and has a direct impact on liver health: what aging does to this organ. Block 6. What happens to the liver after age 60? The aging process nobody told you about. Here's a truth that nobody really likes to hear, but it makes all the difference when you decide how to take care of your health. The liver ages. Not in the same way as skin, which shows wrinkles and age spots. Not in the same way as knees, which start to ache on stairs. The liver ages from the inside, silently, accumulating decades of work. After the age of 60, the liver gradually loses some of its regenerative capacity. When we are young, the liver is an extraordinarily resilient organ. It can lose up to 70% of its mass and still recover. With aging, this capacity diminishes. It doesn't disappear, but it does decrease. Blood flow to the liver also decreases with age. This means the organ receives less oxygen and fewer nutrients, while simultaneously needing to process the same amount, or sometimes more, of substances arriving via the bloodstream. The production of liver enzymes, the microscopic workers that carry out chemical reactions within the liver, tends to decrease with age. As a result, the liver of a 70-year-old may take significantly longer to process certain substances than the liver of a 30-year-old. And here's something that affects virtually everyone over 60: medications. Many people in this age group take 2, 3, 4, or more medications on a continuous basis. Each of these medications is processed by the liver. Each interaction between two medications demands even more work from the organ. And with a liver that is already aging and has a reduced capacity for regeneration, this processing can be slower and more costly than in the past. I'm not saying to stop taking your medication. Never. I'm saying that this is yet another reason why supporting liver health after 60 is so important, perhaps more important than ever before. Think of it this way: you wouldn't treat a 20-year-old car the same way you would treat a brand new one. You'd know the engine would need extra attention, quality oil, and more frequent maintenance. The liver after 60 deserves exactly that kind of consideration. And the good news, and this is really good, is that the liver has a unique characteristic among all the organs in the human body. It responds. When you change your habits, it notices, and it starts working better. In the next segment, I'll show you exactly which foods help the liver function more efficiently, and some of them will surprise you with their simplicity. Block 7: Liver-friendly foods. What to put on your plate to support those who work for you 24 hours a day. I want to make it clear before we begin. There is no miracle superfood that will cure a diseased liver. Any video, any product, anyone who promises that is deceiving you. What does exist, and this is supported by solid research, are foods that support liver function, provide the nutrients it needs, reduce inflammation, and allow the organ to work more efficiently. And most of these foods are so simple, so accessible, that you'll wonder why no one talked about this before. The first, and perhaps the most underestimated of all, is water. It's that simple. The liver depends on adequate hydration to filter and eliminate the substances it processes. When you are dehydrated, the blood becomes more viscous, the flow to the liver decreases, and the filtering work becomes more difficult. Many people over 60 don't feel thirsty with the same intensity as they did when they were younger, meaning they are often mildly dehydrated without knowing it. The general recommendation is 6 to 8 glasses of water a day, spread throughout the hours, not all at once. The second group consists of dark leafy green vegetables, such as spinach, arugula, watercress, and kale. They are rich in chlorophyll, which some studies suggest has a neutralizing effect on certain toxins before they reach the liver, reducing the organ's workload. They are also excellent sources of magnesium, which participates in hundreds of enzymatic reactions in the body, including within the liver itself. The third is garlic. Small, simple, and accessible. Garlic contains sulfur compounds that activate liver enzymes responsible for eliminating toxins. It also has an anti-inflammatory effect, which can benefit an overworked liver. A modest amount, 1 or 2 cloves a day, is sufficient. The fourth factor is fiber. The liver and intestines are inseparable partners. When the intestines function well with regular transit, toxins are eliminated efficiently and the liver has less work to do. When the intestines are sluggish, these toxins remain in contact with the intestinal wall for longer, are reabsorbed into the bloodstream, and reach the liver a second or third time. Fiber, from oats, legumes, and fruits with peel, keeps the intestines functioning and reduces the hepatic load. The fifth is lean protein. The liver needs amino acids to perform its repair and synthesis functions. Good quality proteins, eggs, skinless chicken, fish, legumes, provide these amino acids without overloading the organ with excess saturated fats. And the sixth, which may surprise you, coffee. Large-scale studies have consistently shown that moderate coffee consumption, without sugar or heavy additives, is associated with lower rates of liver inflammation and slower progression of liver disease. The mechanisms are still being studied, but the association is robust enough for researchers to take it seriously. Attention! I'm not recommending that you start drinking coffee if you don't already, or that you increase the amount if you already consume a lot. I'm saying that within a balanced diet, 1 to 2 cups of pure coffee a day can have benefits for the liver, and that you don't need to feel guilty about it. But now, before talking about what to do at night, I need to reveal the mistake that probably most harms the liver after the age of 60. And it's a mistake that happens most often after 8 o'clock at night. Block 8. The mistake millions make before sleeping. The moment when you think you're taking care of yourself and you're doing the opposite. I'm going to tell you something I discovered while studying the eating patterns of people over 60 years old over many years. Most people are reasonably careful about breakfast. They eat something balanced, they put in a little effort. At lunch, they also make an effort. They eat protein, they eat salad, they eat rice and beans. It's at the end of the day, between dinner and bedtime, that discipline begins to wane. And it's not for lack of trying. It's organic. Cortisol and serotonin levels throughout the day affect appetite and food cravings in a way that makes us much more vulnerable to consuming sweets, simple carbohydrates, and ultra-processed foods precisely during that time. What does this mean in practice? It means that the person who had a nice dinner at 6 in the afternoon is, at 10 at night, in front of the television with a bowl of store-bought popcorn. Or eating that little chocolate bar that is just one. Or opening the refrigerator in search of something sweet without even knowing exactly what they want. This nighttime snacking, especially when it involves sugar, refined carbohydrates, or foods high in fat, reaches the liver at the worst possible time. Think about the cycle. The sun has gone down, body temperature starts to drop, melatonin begins to be produced, metabolism slows down in preparation for sleep. Everything in the body is saying, time to shut down. And at that moment, you send a surge of sugar to your liver. The liver, which was already preparing for the nighttime cleaning shift, needs to divert resources to process this load. The insulin spike disrupts glycemic regulation in the following hours. And when the liver finally manages to resume its cleaning and regeneration work, around 1 or 2 in the morning, it is more tired, more overworked, and less efficient than it was before. The practical result is that the quality of those hours of deep sleep is compromised. And the body, sensing that nighttime processing is not happening as it should, may activate alert mechanisms that result precisely in waking up at 3 in the morning. So the mistake isn't eating dinner. The mistake isn't eating at night. The mistake is eating too late, eating very late, and especially eating the wrong kind of things, sugar, saturated fat, ultra-processed foods, during the hours when the liver needs space to work. And before I show you what to do, I want to tell you a story. A true story of someone who lived through exactly this. and who found something on the other side that I would like you to find too. Block 9, Roberto's story. When the body speaks and someone finally decides to listen. Roberto was 74 years old when he began to realize that something was wrong. It wasn't anything dramatic. It wasn't pain, it wasn't a crisis, it wasn't anything that justified a trip to the emergency room. It was a collection of inconveniences that, together, had transformed his life into a lesser version of what he wanted to live. I would wake up every night, always between 2 and 3 in the morning. Sometimes I could fall back asleep in half an hour. Sometimes I would stay awake until sunrise, listening to the silence of the house and thinking about things I couldn't stop thinking about. In the morning, he would wake up tired. It didn't matter how many hours he had slept. 5, 7, 9. The tiredness was the same. A fatigue he described as a weight that stays inside. That wasn't relieved by coffee, wasn't relieved by rest, wasn't relieved by anything he knew. After lunch, especially on days when he ate something heavier, a fatty meat, a pasta dish, he would feel that bloating, that abdominal pressure that he had already learned to call my digestion problem. As if it were a chronic condition that simply needed to be accepted. Roberto had gone to doctors. He had tests done. The results came back within the normal range. The doctor said it was his age, that it was normal for a 74-year-old man to feel this way. And Roberto accepted it because the doctor was the specialist, and because he no longer had the energy to question it. But inside him, there was a small voice. That voice that most of us learn to ignore as we get older, that says, "This doesn't seem right." That voice kept talking. One day, while talking to his daughter, Roberto almost casually mentioned his pattern of always waking up at the same time. His daughter, who had watched a video about liver health, asked a simple question. "Dad, what do you eat at night after dinner?" Roberto thought. Every day, religiously, while watching television, he ate cookies, the ones filled with chocolate, which had been his favorites for as long as he could remember. 1 or 2, sometimes more, with a glass of chocolate milk. Because it was tradition. Because it wasn't a small thing. Because it couldn't hurt. Later, that conversation planted a seed. Roberto decided to conduct an experiment. Not a diet, not a drastic restriction. A simple experiment. For 30 days, he would eat nothing after 8 o'clock at night. Only water, perhaps some unsweetened tea. The first week was difficult. Not because he was hungry, he wasn't. It was the habit. It was the ritual. It was the years and years of cookies and television that his body was demanding. In the second week, he noticed the first change. He was still waking up during the night, but he was able to fall back asleep faster. Instead of staying awake for an hour, he was awake for 15 minutes. By the end of the 3rd month, he continued beyond 30 days because it was working. Roberto was waking up once or twice a week in the middle of the night instead of every night. The post-lunch swelling had decreased significantly, and that weight, that underlying fatigue I had carried for years, was lighter. He didn't lose 20 kilos. He didn't rejuvenate 2 decades. He didn't do anything extraordinary. He did something simple and consistent, and his body responded. Roberto is a fictional character I created to illustrate a real pattern, but the pattern is absolutely real. Simple changes, sustained over time, have an impact that no short-term treatment can replicate. And now I want to show you exactly what you can start doing tonight. Block 10, what to do tonight. Simple, concrete steps that you can start in just a few hours. We've arrived at the moment I know you've been waiting for. And I want you to notice one thing. Nothing I'm going to suggest here is radical, expensive, or difficult to implement. They are behavioral adjustments. They are habits. They are choices that, when made consistently, build a real difference over time. The first step is to drink water throughout the day. Don't wait until you're thirsty. For people over 60, the sensation of thirst may not be a reliable indicator of hydration. A simple strategy is to keep a bottle or glass of water always visible, and drink a glass each time you get up or change activities. Avoid drinking large amounts right before bed. This can disrupt sleep for other reasons. The second step is to end meals earlier. This doesn't mean starving yourself. It means adjusting your dinner time so that it ideally happens by 7 or 8 in the evening, giving your liver at least 3 hours before you go to bed to begin the digestive process without interfering with its nighttime regeneration work. The third step is to make dinner lighter, not necessarily smaller in volume, but less processed. Lean proteins, vegetables, a small portion of complex carbohydrates. Reduce fried foods, fatty meats, and heavily seasoned dishes specifically at this meal. The fourth step is to eliminate nighttime snacking that involves sugar and ultra-processed foods. If you feel the need to eat something between dinner and bedtime, choose options that don't put too much strain on your liver. A small amount of nuts, such as walnuts or chestnuts, a piece of cheese, a thin slice of whole wheat bread. No sweets, no filled cookies, no juices. The fifth step is to create consistency in sleep schedules. The liver follows circadian rhythms. When you sleep and wake up at the same times every day, you help the body synchronize its biological cycles, and the liver can perform its nighttime functions at the right time more efficiently. The sixth step, and this one is non-negotiable. If you have persistent symptoms, fatigue that doesn't improve, frequent abdominal discomfort, changes you noticed in the warning signs I mentioned earlier, schedule an appointment with your doctor and ask for a liver function test. Simple blood tests can reveal valuable information. Don't wait. These 6 steps are not a treatment. They are care. They are the equivalent of changing your car's oil regularly, checking your tire pressure before a long trip. They are the basic care that a liver of 60, 70, 80 years old deserves, and that, more often than we should, we fail to provide. Closing. The voice you may have ignored. We've reached the end, and I want to leave you with one last thing. Throughout your life, your body has tried to communicate with you, sometimes in whispers, sometimes in clearer signals. And all too often, especially after 60, we learn to interpret those signals as it's just old age, and stop asking questions. Perhaps your body has been trying to send signals for years. Signals you've attributed to aging, stress, the genetic lottery. Signals that an overworked liver patiently sends, night after night, in the only way it knows how. Perhaps these sleepless nights aren't just a consequence of age. Perhaps this underlying fatigue isn't simply the price of having lived a long life. Perhaps your body is waiting for you to pay attention, to ask yourself a different question or two, to consider a possibility or two that you haven't yet considered. Perhaps today is the day to start listening to those signs. Not with fear, with curiosity, with care. With the same attention you would give to a dear friend who was trying to tell you something important. Because the liver doesn't ask for much. It asks for water. It asks for a schedule. It asks that you don't overload it with extra work at 3 in the morning. It asks that when the symptoms become more serious, you take it to someone who can help. That's all. Thank you for staying with me until now. Seriously. Amidst everything competing for your attention, you chose to spend these minutes learning about your health. That says a lot about who you are. Final call to action. If this video opened any doors in your mind, if you recognized any signs, if someone you love could benefit from this information, please like this video and share it with family and friends over 60. It might be exactly the information someone needed to hear today. If you're not already subscribed to the Professor Rex channel, subscribe now and turn on notifications. Every week I bring you content like this, serious information explained simply, made for those who care about quality of life after 60. And before we wrap up this video, let me ask you a question. And I really want to read your answer in the comments. Do you often wake up in the middle of the night? At what time does this happen most frequently? Tell me about it below. You'll be surprised how many people are in the same situation and what we can discover together when we start comparing our stories. Until the next video, take care.